All right. How are you guys doing? It's Ninja Nate, and this is Professor Kai, my primary teacher in Hawaii. He's got the extensive background. He's everyone that I've known that's famous is because of him. So we're gonna talk to you today about like some JKD movement and maybe in some self-defense. But he's got a long history and background in actual self-defense movements, both in street fighting and in MMA. So I wanted to pass it off to him a little bit. Maybe tell him a little more about his background and even what we want to learn today. If there's any comments here, we're gonna keep looking out for any Q&As. If you want anything specific to ask us or him, then we can address that as well. But as we just have a short introduction, I'll get into a warm-up after that, and then we'll get started with our techniques for today. So, without further ado, Professor Kai.
Aloha everyone. So just by way of a little bit of background, I've known Nate since he was in high school, and as many of you may know, he started out in a regular martial arts program under Victor Marx as a child, and then he had a time frame where he was kind of on his own exploring, and then through one of his friends from a church group, he met me. Now interestingly enough, my JKD journey also started in high school, and like Nate, my martial arts journey started as a small child, primarily in two hybrid systems, Kodokan Danzanryu Jiu-Jitsu and Kaju Kembo Kempo, both of which are mixed martial arts. But Jeet was the next evolution, and I was interested in it from childhood because my father put a poster of Bruce Lee up in our room that my brother and I shared as kids, and then he said, "Train hard like Uncle Bruce." So my brother and I, being little kids, we honestly thought that Bruce Lee was our uncle. So, with my last name being Lee. So all the way up until middle school, I actually thought Bruce Lee was my uncle. I didn't know he had passed away. And I thought it was in my blood to be an exceptional martial artist. Only when my grandmother was doing the family tree did I find out that I couldn't find him. I asked my grandmother, "Where's Uncle Bruce?" And she said, "You know that Lee's the Smith of China, right?" So anyway, that was very disappointing. But not too much later, I met Professor Wally J., who invited me to a high school camp. And at that high school camp, I met Guru Danny Nasanto. And I expressed how I was sad that there was no JKD classes in Hawaii. And he told me, well, actually, his good friend and training partner, Richard Bastillo, was from Hawaii and was going to be starting something there. So he connected me, and I was able to be on the ground floor with Sifu Richard from the very beginning of his teaching in Hawaii. And through him, I met a lot of other JKD luminaries and was able to train pretty much my whole life since then. So in that sense, it's an honor to be able to pass that torch somewhat on to Nate. And as Bruce Lee and Danny Nasanto and the other greats have said, they always encourage you to train with everyone you can. And so to pay it forward, I've done that for Nate, where I've introduced him to all of my teachers that are more famous, like Richard Bastillo, Jihan J, and so forth, to be able to help him on his journey. So if you have any questions on any of those people, feel free to ask, and I'm happy to fill you in. One thing that we thought of trying to help you with was how to apply some core basic JKD material for practical self-defense. So the first thing we were going to look at was the Baizhang that you learn, the basic strong side lead that you learn in JKD, and how would you employ that? Because in real life, you're not going to walk around a shopping mall or a restaurant or a beach, you know, like this all the time. You're not going to do that. So it has to be natural. And in truth, your journey as a martial artist should be as natural as possible and seamless. You might not know this, but my name, Kai, in Hawaiian means the ocean or water. So be water, my friend, the famous Bruce Lee quote, has been something that's been dear to me since I was a little boy. Because I didn't have a choice, I am water by name. So that concept is important. Now, why am I bringing that up? Because when we're talking about strong side lead, water can be in many states. So in its relaxed state, I might just be talking to you in strong side lead. Oh, that's interesting. But it doesn't look like anything. I actually do have the closest weapon, closest target functionality going on, but I'm not in a formal offensive combat stance. The concept is, in the moment you needed to, if you suddenly attacked toward me, I could be ice by giving you an intercept, something hard for you to deal with, or I could be gas. I could be like steam and disappear. So I want to show you that. So if Nate and I are here, and I'm going to be the bad guy, partly because I'm a lot bigger, and I always felt as a kid, I don't know if you folks did, when I looked at books or martial arts magazines, when the instructor outweighs the student that he's demonstrating on by 80 pounds, it kind of looks like he's the bully. So Nate's going to be the hero today, plus this is his live show, so I mainly just want to help my student help you. So in that concept, I'm the bad guy. On a natural level, he can deploy strong side lead just by profiling a little bit. What do I mean by that? If I'm facing him directly, and instead I start talking on angle, that's what I mean. So he's already creating a situation where his weapons are closer to me, and he has better balance and better mobility. Any stance is a function of two things, stability and mobility. So if I'm a sumo wrestler, I have crazy stability, right? If you're in Taekwondo, you have really good mobility. You really want to find the ideal balance for you in adjusting those two things. So on a natural level, in a state of liquid water, Nate's going to be giving me a little bit of a edge, of a diagonal profile. And that way, he's well suited to move from water to ice to steam. So, if I'm aggressively moving toward him and he has no time, he's previously worked with you on a strong side lead hand intercept. So in slow motion, if I'm coming toward him, that lead hand or lead leg could intercept me, right? So, by contrast, he could also be gas. He could be steam. So he could go completely by me. I'm going to throw a big right hand at him, and all of a sudden, he's not there. Okay? Now you can't see the whole picture, but the footwork is that he's moving 45 degrees. So we're going to move way back so you can see this. If I'm facing you and I want to do this and you're the bad guy, if I already have our profile and you come toward us, we could intercept. We could intercept, right? Or we could be gas and we could do that forward or away, but in either case, we're moving offline. Why? Because if you're bigger and stronger than me, and if you started the problem, then in timing, we would have to be crazy fast to be able to beat that. If we improve our position, we solve two problems at once. We move your target as well as getting our weapons online to attack you. I'll give you an example by moving away, because it'll be easier for you to see. If you were attacking us and we move straight back, you would just keep attacking, and our target presentation hasn't changed. The most obvious example of this is if you had a firearm. If you had a firearm and I stay right in front of you and you pull that trigger, it doesn't matter how many steps back I take, that projectile is still going to go through me. So I don't want your target to still be here. We can do that by moving away if we go 45 offline, okay? Or we can do that by going forward if we go 45 degrees forward. Now the beauty of the forward momentum, if you have the courage to do it, because it does require courage to do, is that then you can't see us at all because we literally are bypassing you. And whatever our inside limb is now the closest weapon to the closest target. So conversely, if we went in the other vector, so even though we're in this lead, if we went that way, and we wanted to use our lead hand and lead leg, if we went off on this vector, that is now very easy to do. So if you can understand what we're trying to illustrate here, if I have the time and space to do it, BAM! You enter my space and we're ice. If I don't have that time and space, and I need to buy some time to be able to implement our weapons delivery system, then we can go offline or we can go offline, right? So this is something most people don't think about, because many people, when they first start in Jeet Kune Do, they think of it more like dueling, meaning that Sifu Nate and I are in the bridge from Enter the Dragon. I hope you all like our pants, by the way. We just got these. It's kind of a cool little thing.
Yeah.
So they're used to this, where in this situation, right, from Enter the Dragon, we've agreed to this. We're like saying we mutually agree to a contest type position, right? And it doesn't have to be striking. As I was working with him yesterday, we can also use this for grappling. We can also use this for grappling. We can also use this for grappling, right? There's lots of options that you have. One of the beautiful things that was initiated by Bruce Lee, but was certainly followed by Guru Dan and the other first generation students, is that exploration of no limitations, right? And that's important to consider, because out in the world we have so many people that argue about these things.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, well, what is Jeet Kune Do? Is it this, is it this, is it this, is it this?
Right.
Well, the same question would be, who are you? Because each one of us is an individual. And in his own words, Bruce encouraged us to explore our potential as individuals and to grow. And you're not going to know what that is without testing it. And that's also why pressure testing is important. Anybody can be an amazing, tough guy fighting the air. But when you actually have a fully resistant opponent, it turns into a different thing. So, and everyone has different attributes, right? So, on size and strength, I'm a much larger person. But then at the same time, if I was untrained, somebody who is lean and quick would be an obstacle, because if he's able to hit the big person before the big person can do anything, and his target choices are intelligent, then the large person won't have an opportunity to use their size and strength, right? The classic David and Goliath concept. So, in this idea, where we're going with this is that you might have an unequal situation in self-defense. That's what I'm trying to make clear. In this case, we can both be water. Okay, we'll demonstrate this in slow motion. Because we're choosing to be here. We're mutually participating in this together. So, he's going to counter, I counter, he counters, I counter, he counters, right? And this can go back and forth, right? You understand the concept? So, that's because we both choose to be water in a very flowing yin-yang type of way in search of fluidity, right? Which is one of the concepts that we try to employ. But what if it's really, really not fair? What if it's really, really unequal? Because one person was just doing their thing, minding their own business, counting clouds or something, and then someone else comes and wants to hurt them. Now, in that situation, you're not going to have the luxury of the dueling time of getting set and bridging in place. You don't have that. So this is something I taught Nate in high school. It's going to possibly look intimidating or offensive to some of you. But the idea is, in real life, especially here in Hawaii, and Sifu Richard Bastillo has told me this since I was a teenager, and Ninja Nate grew up here, so he can back me up on this. Anytime someone would bring it up on the mainland, Sifu Richard would use me as a witness and say, well, Kai knows because Hawaiians love to fight. And he's right. The good thing about our culture, the good thing though, is those fights are usually somewhat honorable. Meaning, growing up here, you grow up fighting a lot in elementary, middle school, high school. But usually people aren't bringing guns and knives to the table, and they're not driving by your house afterward. And in all honesty, my top student in this particular art is someone I fought the summer between 8th and 9th grade, who then became a best friend, and I was best man at his wedding. So that's a shout out to Hunter Stockton if you're watching this. But in truth, in this culture, you earn friendships through fighting. And let's be honest, Bruce Lee's closest students and closest friends were people that he sparred all the time. He pressure tested his work with everybody from the old school Seattle period with Sigungtaki Kimura and James DeMille, to the Oakland time frame with James Lee and Wally J, who I mentioned, to the LA time period with Guru Dan, Richard Bastillo, Sifu Tim Tackett, all those other great people from that time frame. These are people that they knew Bruce Lee, not just as a martial arts teacher, but as someone that they actually sparred with all the time, and as a true close friend. And I didn't do this on purpose, but I ended up emulating his example in that I've always taught in a small, close-knit environment with a few trusted people, of which Nate is one of them. And I've discovered through that process and getting to know Bruce's first-generation students and friends, that journey that he had was something I understood because it was an experience that I knew to be true. That kind of relationship is very unique, where people aren't just students, they're trusted friends, and honestly, they're a member of your family. And that ends up happening. So this is actually quite rare for me. I'm not a famous guy. I'm not all over the internet or videos. I teach in a very personal, intimate way, and I put you heat. I give you heat because I want to forge these guys into somebody that could deal with somebody my size or bigger and stronger than me even. And to do that, I have to give them a problem that they have to solve. I'm saying this to you because I don't want you to think that I'm abusing your friend when I demonstrate the next thing I'm going to show you. So here's the problem. We didn't have this polite, honorable, gentlemanly duel that set us up in enter the dragon bridge position. Instead, he was just talking to somebody on his phone when I'm a bully and I walk in and go, "What? I like your phone, bro. I like your phone. This is my phone now. I want this phone now," right? Now, if it's just over a material object, it's probably not worth potentially harming someone else. And why do I put it that way? Because that's how I see it. I don't see the decision to fight as a whether or not I'm going to get hurt then. I see it as whether or not I'm making a decision to hurt you. Because I know I can. And with the proper training, with resistance, and with all ranges and levels of combat, that would be my hope for you, to have the confidence that you can solve problems if you're forced to, but that you choose the peaceful path because it's the right thing to do. Just giving you an example. So that would be part of your training. So what do I mean by this? In this situation, right, if he was clueless, he ends up losing his phone, right? But if he had a heads up that this could happen, then when he was using his phone, right, he already turns himself, because he has situational awareness, to where no one could approach into his space without him being aware of it. And then depending on the level of aggression, as I come forward, he can make choices. He can make choices. So yes, in an ideal world, what I taught him was that your first choice is to change your position, because then it allows you to give the bad guy a second chance. That's how I see it. Because I want a proactive, positive mindset. I don't want to see myself as a victim. If you're attacking me and I disengage and reposition, it's because I care about you living an uninjured life. It's because I don't want to hurt you if I don't have to. So the concept is, if I wanted to try to take his phone or hurt him, we'll do this in slow motion. As I come in, he disengages, he's gone, and then I'm like, "Hey, where'd he go? Where'd he go?" And then he has the opportunity to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, did you need to make a phone call? Are you in trouble? Did you want me to call someone for you? Do you need a ride somewhere? How can I help you?" It's pretty difficult for someone to continue to be aggressive if you're being kind, courteous, and respectful toward them. That's the number one rule of self-defense, in all honesty, that you learn from martial arts, is you get rid of that insecurity, and you get rid of that fear, and you end up becoming someone that actually can make a choice versus someone that's forced into a corner and has no choice. And if you'd ever trained with me before, you know I always say the same three things over and over again. No good decision is ever made out of anger or fear. Good decisions are made out of courage and love. So be the aloha you want to see in the world. But it helps you to be a kinder, courteous, respectful person if you are not a jerk, if you are a good guy, if you're a good girl, if you're someone that is in the service of others, that helps people, that's looking for the greater good. If you're that person, you're less likely to be chosen as a victim, especially if you're well trained and you can back that up. And that's a big difference. If you can back it up, then worst case, right? I'm going to go level up now. So he goes to disengage, but I chase, right? Now I'm forcing him to have to go next level. So here's your force continuum. Ideally, I'm not there at all. I'm here, I see someone over there that's a problem, so I leave. No engagement, right? Level 2, he sees me coming up, and he disengages before I ever touch him, and then he asks me a question. And that way, he's now in charge of the processing, right? So that's level 2. Level 3, now I actually have made some form of contact. And his goal is going to be just to escape. So he's got to escape this grab, get rid of my potential attacking hand, push me away, and then now he can run off to his big Ford Expedition and drive off. Now, next level, that's not working, okay? So now he's going to take this and he's going to put me in a hole. Go for a hammerlock? Yes. Okay? So now I can't really hurt him, right? He's in control. And now he is giving me yet another second chance, telling me to calm down and so forth, right? Now this does require training because you want to be responsible. I don't want anybody watching a video to end up doing something that's going to cause serious injury or death to someone when you don't have to do that. So the idea here is he's just creating a situation where he has control, and he's really trying to acquire ABC is what I call it, awareness, balance, and control. Once you establish ABC, it's easier for you to maintain the situation without feeling like I'm the one creating the problem, okay? So that would be level 4, was you're controlling and containing the violence. Your last resort would be he goes into full-on Chinese connection mode and turns my attack into the opportunity for his attack. So I'm here, I'm doing the same problem, but now he does strike. He's hitting and does what he's got to do until I am no longer a threat and no longer able to hurt him. Or maybe he's with a child or with his mother or something like this. So he can't just run away. He's in a position of responsibility to take care of someone, and thus he has to do that. So this is just an idea, because if you learn in isolation, okay, we're going to work on strong side lead. Okay, we're going to work on the pendulum kick or whatever else he's shown you so far. You need a context for that. So what I'm trying to share with you is that context for real life self-defense is not necessarily going to be this bridge. And yet there is value in this, because this is connection. So also part of Be Water, my friend, is that connection. The moment there is touch, there is knowledge. So in that sense, that touch could be anywhere. This is a construct to help you learn that idea, right? And this can almost be done Tai Chi. I can be here, he can flow back the other way, I can be here, right? And we're staying connected and continuing to target each other, but it's in a way that is helping us with our building our sensitivity, our control, and our fluidity. So that's just a primer on what we discussed that he wanted me to share with you as a concept on functionalizing your Jeet Kune Do journey rather than only seeing it as techniques. Because one of the most beautiful things about this art is that it's not techniques. Linda Lee, when she wrote into the book Tao Jeet Kune Do, she wrote that it was important to her, and she was grateful that we were carrying on not just the art, but the philosophy of Jeet Kune.
Right, thank you very much. Very good. So yeah, that's everything that we wanted to share for today. If there's any questions, we're going to check the comments now and see if we got anything that we want to address, because there might have been something in the live chat. Let's check it out. Okay, stunt double. Did you start? This is like when I'm clenching with different people when training Muay Thai. It's like water with some people and others by hurt, but try to hurt. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I guess it's the same. It's the same as doing that. Good stuff. Love it. Thank you.
This is my first live training I've ever done in my whole life, by the way, so thank you for being part of it.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, we did get just asking about Taekwondo kicks. We might do that later on if you want to show some. We did that actually on the, we just did that on the Instagram live yesterday, but because we had Jason, who's also a Taekwondo artist, but we can show a little bit of that as well. He's watching Houston, Texas.
I love Texas, by the way.
Yeah. This guy is the dude. All right.
My channel's a lot smaller, but you're welcome to follow it. Nate can type in the link.
So Aloha Kai is his, and I put a link at the bottom at the end of this video that you can check that out as well. But yeah, let's.
And for the Texas guy, I even have some firearms in Texas on my channel.
What happened to my chat? There it is. I heard that Kanji Camp was created in Hawaii. Is there a lot of schools out there? You want to say that?
Yes. As I mentioned, Kanji Kembo is one of the two original styles that I came up in, and honestly, I see that as a little bit of a trinity. So in other words, in the 1920s, you have Professor Henry Okazaki, who was Wally J's teacher, starting Kodokan Danzanryu Jiu-Jitsu, which in all honesty was the world's first truly multi-ethnic, multi-cultural martial art, where it had Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, Chinese Kung Fu, Filipino Eskrima, Hawaiian Lua, literally like every cultural contact, because here in Hawaii, we are the most isolated, populated place in the world, but we are also right smack dab between East and West. So you have Asia, and you have America and South America. Hawaii's right in the middle. And throughout modern times, my ancestors, our ancestors, both part Hawaiian, were here first, but being where we are, you have the Chinese coming through, the Spanish coming through, Captain Cook, America, everybody and their cousin after that, and then all the transplanted people that culturally came here. Many of them had a warrior culture of their own, and that's part of the journey of Jeet Kune Do in terms of the first generation. If you look at what Guru Dan and Sifu Richard did with the Filipino martial arts in particular, and recently we participated in a friend of ours doing an FMA project for a virtual fight, which I'm sure is going to be a great thing when it comes out. We'll share that with you. But FMA was their cultural platform. And then of course you have Muay Thai, which was mentioned, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. All of these are part of it. I also am an NRA instructor, so I teach firearms as well. I do everything from ground grappling to bang bang, because to me it's all part of the same thing. So from Danzanryu in the 1920s to Kaji Kembo in the 1940s, and Kaji Kembo is partly from Danzanryu because Joe Hulk, one of the founders, was a black belt under Okazaki. He and Cedro Adriano Emperado were the main two of the five that were actual black belts in their martial art that helped build the foundation of the system for that art, for Kaji Kembo. And then both of those are an influence for Bruce Lee, because when he went to the party organized by Wally J, who was from Danzanryu, he met a lot of Kempo and Kaji Kempo people from Hawaii. Most notable to most of you would be Ed Parker and Ralph Castro, who invited him to the first internationals in 1964, which really launched his film and television career and made him, famous. But prior to that, that research period, that evolution that he learned from the freedom of the multi-ethnic, multicultural Hawaiians was important, because many of you might know that, like both of us, Bruce Lee also was multi-ethnic and multicultural because of his mother.
That's right.
And that was something that helped him to step out of the construct of how things were from only a Chinese perspective. I'll give you another thing to think about, because Bruce Lee himself, like my parents, had an interracial marriage, and it wasn't just him. Taki Kimura, Guru Danny DeSanto, Sifa Richard Bastillo, all of them had multicultural, multi-ethnic marriages, and thus what we would call Hapa kids, like me and Nate.
Right.
And that is, I think, honestly part of Jeet Kune Do. It's that willingness to see outside of the box. No limitation is limitation, if you will.
Yeah.
And to truly be water is to be unlimited, to be able to take on any form that you could possibly take. And that is true in all four constructs. Physically, as you train your martial art. Right. Mentally, as you think about your strategy and your philosophy, right? Emotionally, as we deal with some of the things we've been talking today about anger and fear versus choosing to behave out of aloha and out of courage. As Eddie Rickenbacker said, you can't have courage, you can't have bravery without making a decision to overcome fear. And then finally, spiritually. Martial arts is a lifelong path. It's not about something that you just do when you're at your peak and fighting MMA. Because otherwise, that would be it. You'd have this little time frame and that would be it. But if you're really trying to use martial arts as a vehicle for self-expression and self-development, as Bruce Lee inspired us to do, then you're choosing a lifelong path that, as one of my teachers, SGM Rick Alamany likes to say, on his dying day, he'll be trying to improve. He'll be on the mat going, I wish I can get my punch just a little bit better. And he backs that up in how he lives his life. So if you're a real, true martial artist, it's 24/7, 365. You're never not training. Even in your sleep, you're making a decision to dream in a way that'll make you a better person tomorrow than you were yesterday. That's the idea. So it's a really fully complete thing. So in answer to your question, yes, tons of Kaiju Kempo, and Kempo here is super popular. This is also where that original Jiu-Jitsu style started, the Koninkan Danzanryu, which was also very influential in World War II because it was used as kind of the hand-to-hand combat base for what was taught to American soldiers and Marines for World War II. And then coming out of World War II, all 5 of the founders of Kaiju Kempo were veterans. They were in the military. So there was that influence in Kaiju Kempo to make it very capable from a street sense.
Right. From a very combat oriented.
Yeah, from more combat oriented, a more practical, real life, where in real life the guy doesn't bow to you and then now this starts, right? And the real life's like, what? This type of thing.
Right.
Hey, who are you? Or false crap. You're talking to someone, just bam, right? You don't even see it. And that's part of what we honestly have to train, because in real life, we're human beings. So that means the fight might actually start here. This is where my fight started. I can't rewind the tape and go, oh, never mind. Okay, try again. Okay, now I'm super good. That's not how it works, okay? Boys and girls, real life school, what my grandfather would jokingly call homeschool, is the lessons you learn at home that you then have to apply to survive real school. Because in real school, there's tons of fights. So the idea was, hey, and then this is very good point, especially since we were childhood martial artists. You gotta know how to keep it real. Because when you're a little kid, there are schools, since Taekwondo was mentioned, where, some commercial schools might have a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old that's a black belt. But my father would always say, you're a black belt when you can deal with an adult man my size that you don't know. And that was a good thing for me
reality, right?
That's reality. That was a good thing for me to hear when I was 11, because when I was 11, I was winning lots of tournaments. I thought I was pretty good, but I wasn't good enough to deal with a 6 foot, 200-pound guy.
You're going with the same size people, same weight class, same belt-ish rank.
Compared to other 6th graders, I was amazing, right? But it doesn't help you in the real world. I do want to address someone else's question. You mentioned Muay Thai. I want to point out that every functional martial art usually has some kind of way to help you understand real life sensitivity. So in JKD, we're most familiar with this, right? But the root of this came from Wing Chun, where you have the chi sao, right? And then so from here, you're learning how to control flow. So it starts out formal, and then goes to informal, and then goes to free.
Yeah.
So the whole concept of the bridge you see in Enter the Dragon is it's a transition from chi sao to fon sao to now all your things are spontaneous from there. Everything has it. So if we were in wrestling, right, then we would learn how to go back and forth flowing with that grappling drill as a way to learn the functional base. And then in Muay Thai, right, I'm cupping this way, but the idea is because I want to be able to steer him into knees or steer him into elbows. So that functionality is there. And there's different attributes. So even at this close range, Nate has the flexibility that he probably could get that kick all the way up to my ribs or up to my head, right? Okay? But in order to pull it off, he has to make the target available. So he would pull this arm down, bringing my face closer to his kick. You see that? That's all part of the clinch game of Muay Thai, right? And then, of course, in Jiu-Jitsu, then it's total zero distance. And you're dealing with whole body sensitivity, not just from the grappling range, but from a functional ability to control his anatomy. So every martial art has that. On the Taekwondo question, again, this is my first time doing this live video thing, so I'm just kind of a little bit bouncing around based on what I think I remember someone asked. So on the Taekwondo question, here's something that most people don't think about that is a practical value of Taekwondo. Both of us have trained in Korea. And something that most people don't think about is you might learn something like an axe kick, which I don't think you can see that, but or a crescent kick. You might learn these fancy Taekwondo kicks, right? And you might only think of them because of how they're trained as something that he and I would do from kicking distance, right? But what if you were on a subway train and someone came up to you? I could be sitting in that subway train with one hand on the pole, and by comparison, the other person's like 9 feet tall. Bam! Their hands reach in, you use the crescent kick to move their hands. Again, part of the philosophy of Jeet Kune Do is you've got to be able to see outside of the box. So think about how you could use those kicks from a seated position, from being on the ground even, because that's how I teach these guys to use them. All of those tools don't just not exist because we're on the ground. We're not limited to only our ground jiu-jitsu syllabus. Because if the other person isn't there yet, they're coming toward you, then yes, you have those kicks. You have that arsenal at your disposal, and why not? Your legs are stronger than your arms, especially for women and children. The ratio of how much power you can convey with your lower body is much greater. So why not do so? Especially since for self-defense, your targets are not sport targets. I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but even in MMA, there are rules. So if you look at the list of rules that you have in the UFC or in Bellator, right? And I'm not dissing the UFC. Oh, we're wearing UFC shirts, and
Yeah.
it's the UFC is a good thing, and honestly, it's pressure testing.
It's pressure testing, yeah.
But what you want to see is that is something where if he and I are sparring MMA, we also both want to be able to see our families next week. It's not the same thing as someone getting attacked at a subway station. So the difference is there's all these things that you can't do in MMA. I'm not supposed to eye gouge, right? I'm not supposed to Mike Tyson to Holyfield his ear. I'm not supposed to Count Dracula his trachea, which is very much a part of Hawaiian Lua, a lot of biting, right?
Yeah.
But in our ancestors, we didn't have any problems with diseases that could be communicated by me biting out your trachea, so we weren't worried about it, right? And in a life and death moment, you got bigger problems than disease issues. The concept is this: what are you training for? You have to have the discipline in your training to be able to have that line so that we can pressure test with sparring without serious injury, or we supplement with equipment. And Guru Dan is fond of pointing out how Bruce and he and the other first generation guys were huge pioneers in the use of equipment. And I personally use it a lot. I use all sorts of padding. One of my friends, Coach Tony Blauer, who has his own self-defense program, PDR Spear, he developed this whole program with the panic attack and his gear for the spear system, which I utilize because it's excellent gear, and you don't know unless you can go all out. And with his gear, even though I'm way bigger, I can hit Nate really hard, and he can go home to his family and it looks like he never even came to class. So with gear like that, you can transmit your skills with power, with technique, with accuracy, and deliver that in a way that is realistic without permanent injury to your partner. That also was part of the original idea behind the Mukjung, the wooden dummy, is to allow you to hit hard and have contact and to solo train, which, as we all deal with this coronavirus situation, becomes super valuable to be able to do that. There's another video, which I think it's on my channel, but I also gave it to Nate to put on his, where we're showing you how to use trees to practice all of your FMA drills, right? Because then you can hit hard. You can practice hitting hard. If you don't do that, then the first time you hit somebody hard, your weapon falls right out of your hand. Someone has a question?
The Wing Chun flowing hand movements are kind of the same when you clinch high level at Muay Thai and Thai fighters.
Yeah, I mean, actually, there's an easy way to show that for the people that are less familiar with Muay Thai. If Nate does an isosceles position, like he's holding a firearm, right? Then if this is his head, this is my core clinch for Muay Thai. Now, where that starts to look very much connected to the principles you see in Wing Chun is that from here I can use elbow energy to move his head this way. I can, from the wrist, delve out this way, right? So all of that is true. So on a Wing Chun range, you can see, okay, I'm going to go Bong Sao, flow through, right, and attack. Or I'm here and I come under and I Tan Sao to jut to attack. Now you could do that also in the Thai clinch where I'm here, and the same concept now. I can use elbow energy and bomb, and now he's down here. Or we can go the other way and I can feed the hand under and come here, right? Not sure if you can see. Boom, right? So that same angle and geometry of the body can be used to manipulate the person at range or close up. And before someone says it, that's even true with the feet. It's more true on the ground where everything happens slower, but it's very doable if I use it this way. In other words, if at range, if Nate brings his right foot to my head, I could just do an obstruction, which would be common in Muay Thai or MMA, right? He goes for the obstruction, boom. Now, let's say I want to add this other skill set. I'll show you two things. Same intercept, but now with elbow energy, I come over and now he's in a leg lock on the ground. Or, this next one I'll go way slow. Same intercept, but now I come over instead of under. The last time I came under, this time I come over with a Fuk Sao to a Bong Sao, and now we're here, and he's in a takedown position. Okay, and then again I can go into the leg lock. So all kinds of cool stuff to play with, and that's part really of the joy of having that freedom, that unlimited state that comes from training in this art, as well as the other ones I mentioned that I grew up with, the Kodokan Danzanru and the Kajikembo Kempo. I like that idea that every possibility is available, but you have to do the hard work to be able to connect the Legos. And if you learn each Lego with integrity, solidly, each one, learning it really well. So you're learning your striking Lego or your grappling Lego or your energy control Lego or your joint Lego or your weapons Lego, whatever Lego it is. Then when you get those all down, it's your choice whether you're making an airplane out of that or a boat out of that or a car out of that or the Death Star out of that, whatever you want to make out of your Legos. It's possible if you're willing to do the hard work to learn the individual parts and to work on the sensitivity, the energy, and the transitions. And the transitions is the magic. Watch any pro MMA fight. It's where everyone gets hurt.
Right.
It's where everyone gets hurt. My good friend, Coach Ken Lee of United MMA, his son and daughter, Angela Lee and Christian Lee, are champions with ONE FC. It's one of my favorite things that he likes to say is that everyone loses in the transitions between your striking and grappling. Mm-hmm. If you don't train that magical sensitivity portion, you're going to lose.
Which I think Jakey does very well, and that's where you're training all those bridging gaps between each range, whether it be kicking range or it's all the way on weapon range to kicking range, then you're going to boxing range, then you're going to trapping, and then you're going to the grappling range. So like all these transitions, Bruce already knew that that's where he needed to like work on, figure out where they connect. Because he saw Wing Chun has its limitations, like with the Wong Jack Man fight. He found he had to chase the guy down. He didn't have enough way to chase back and effectively, or to stop them from getting away as quickly. So sometimes the grappling arms was good for that. He was able to keep them there longer, utilize some trapping, and then go into locking. And then also like for the long range stuff, like the pendulum step kick or all that, chasing them down when they're trying to escape, just shoot in there before they can get out all the way at high speed, and you just like intercept them before they can even take that rear step all the way to where they're out of there. So yeah, very much so. And I was actually thinking there's another thing that just put in my mind. We were talking with the ranges. Oh yeah, everyone starts with one art. Like for me, I started in karate, so I'm very comfortable with the kicking range and a little bit of the punching range, but they did mostly back fist kind of stuff, and it's all point sparring stuff, right? So in a way, I had to force myself to get into I saw the Wing Chun and I saw the boxing as very efficient for hand movement, which was not really my game at the time. And then later on, that became pretty good. But then ground became the more difficult thing. So like, you're always gonna suck at one of them, right? So, but you're trying to find a way to balance all of them out and force yourself to try each range and get proficient in each range. And then later to fluidly blend them, like we're talking about, how to transition between all the ranges. Because if you had a little bit of everything, let's say you're fighting a striker. If you transition very well into the grappling range and are not comfortable, you have an advantage now. If you're in the grappling range but you know how to transition out of the grappling range and go into striking range, you have an advantage now. So that kind of thing. So like everyone usually has their one go-to thing. Now there's a few people nowadays doing MMA that do have a pretty decent balance, I'd say. But even then, there are some limitations there as well. Like for example, he was saying like the targeting system. They're trained to hit certain areas that in a real situation would take longer to take someone down.
Multiple attackers.
Yeah, multiple attackers as well. It's all dueling one-on-one.
And the environment.
Yeah.
So if you've ever been in one of those type of matches, which I have, it's very intense, but you're not really worrying about somebody's grandmother coming in there with a brick or somebody's kid coming in there with a stick and trying to get you. But in a street environment or in a combat environment, you have other things. You don't have a smooth padded surface. You could have concrete or rocks or things you can trip over. In the real situation, you could have asymmetrical warfare where you don't know who the bad guy is. It could be a little kid that has a bomb in a Kleenex box. So you just don't know. There's all these things that could happen, right? And so part of this deal is you do have to forge the Legos. Mm-hmm. So what I mean by that is on one hand, we have the freedom and the out of the box that there's all these possibilities that you can train and utilize to grow. But on the other hand, we also do respect where we come from. So part of why it was important, the last trip we were able to take before the shutdown was to see Sigong Taki Kimura for his birthday. And that's important because it's a connection to the source. And because, honestly, I believe that Junfan core material is important, that you don't want to be necessarily only feeling limited to exactly what somebody did in the late 50s or early 60s, but you should experience what Bruce Lee experienced and what he shared with his first generation people for you to have the platform to go forward. So in Hawaiian culture, we always have that respect for our kupuna, for our ancestors. My Hawaiian Lua teacher, Alohe Dennis Eli, likes to say, if you don't know your roots, you won't know where you're going. And that's important as a Hawaiian because our ancestors were voyagers. They went all over the entire Pacific Ocean by sea, navigating by the stars. So do have that respect for the past, know your roots, and then have application for the present, for the life you're living right now, and also preparation for the future, to the person you want to grow to become, and for what you want to pass on to your friends, your students, your children.
All right, yeah, thank you very much. That's great. So yeah, everyone said, one person said mind-blowing. Someone gave us something.
Thank you.
$2.99, like from E46. Thanks a lot for the super chat. That's the first time actually everyone's ever used it. So if anyone wants to know what that is, that's basically, you can tag your comments at the top and like help support us in a way. It just gives us a little bit of extra income here that we can like, because we do these lessons for free, usually on YouTube. So like,
and we really like these boba milkshakes that we get on Fridays and Sundays. So I think one of you was just kind enough to help us out with the milkshake we're gonna have tomorrow.
Basically,
so,
yeah. So
thank you.
Thank you for the donation. Thanks for supporting. And yeah, if anyone else knows what that is, super chat, you can put in small donations. You can tag your comment at the top so everybody sees it, and it's easier for us to find as well because it kind of lights it up in bold. And yeah, if you saw, it's the guy with the big giant red thumbs up. But yeah, that's pretty cool. So thanks a lot for that. And then one more question here. You mentioned some time in Korea you did hear or you know of see an art called Tukang Musui. From what I found, I hear it's police or military Korean like Taekwondo, Tang Sudo, or Hapkido. Do you know what that is? Tukang Musui.
Yeah, it's related to Musul. So basically, you have two main threads for Korean martial arts. You have the Murakwan, Subakdo, Hwangki, the 9 families that became Taekwondo, but it wasn't originally Taekwondo. And then on the other side, you have Hapkido, Kuksulwan, Harengdo, the much more fuller, larger syllabus self-defense frame martial arts that include joint locks and weapons and things of this nature. And for their formal programs in Korea, you have programs that are specifically designed for the military or for law enforcement, for the police. So all of that family of arts that you're talking about is related to that because the mission determines the syllabus. So in other words, if you're in law enforcement, you don't want to kill anybody, you don't want to be responsible for that, but you do need to control someone. And in all honesty, that's more difficult than being a civilian or being a soldier. Because as a civilian, your responsibility is to do as little as possible just to escape and get home. As a soldier, your goal might be to eliminate the threat, to defeat the enemy. And in all honesty, hand-to-hand combat's already a failure paradigm because that meant you weren't able to use your rifle or you weren't able to use your pistol, you weren't able to use your knife. So now if you're in hand-to-hand, things are already really bad. So it's a different paradigm. To be really capable at the Musul, at those types of intricate control techniques for law enforcement requires greater skill, honestly. And just like it does require greater skill to be able to do these Jiku no techniques because Bruce Lee was such an elevated, highly skilled individual who was always continually sharpening the sword, always trying to be better tomorrow than he was yesterday. And that meant that like every single week, his definition of his training method was slightly different based on who he trained with and how he evolved or what he realized during a session. He would constantly analyze anything. Both of us are grateful to the Wing Loop Museum. They invite us every year to their next development of the Bruce Lee exhibit. And there's so much there that can help you have insight into the man who founded all of this, the man who gave you all of this that you're coming to us to learn more about. And there's so much there. And that's part of the beauty of it is that one of the beauties of Jeet Kune Do for me is I've never been bored with it. It's constantly revealing another layer all the time. And so really that's what you need to do. That's an excellent question, but then it leads to another question, because there's a syllabus that you have for the Korean police, for the Musul, but then that syllabus was developed from several different martial arts luminaries, one of whom is my teacher, Jihan Jae, that Nate's had the opportunity. After he got his black belt from me, I sent him to test for his second degree black belt with my teacher and the federation in Korea, so that he could have that experience too. And in other words, to me, my students are able to help me grow too if I do the opposite of holding them back. If at every opportunity that I have for them to train with my teachers or other people that I've learned from, I welcome that. Because then, if I'm sharing something in class, it's not just a story. It's an experience that they know because they lived it too.
Right. Those experiences are very valuable. And I think that I agree with that. I'm very grateful that he's done that for me, as well as other people that we have met, that he's been gracious in the fact that giving everything in terms of what he has in time, as well as in contacts, as well as in experiences, and sharing that kind of with all of us, as well as together. We do this at the same time. We train together. So with that, I mean, I think that's almost an hour now. And, and there was maybe. Check one more thing if there was one person. There was a follow-up. Just so Taekwondo created from a mix of Taekyon and Karate.
Yeah, to be honest, I know a lot about this, and it's more than we have time for in this video, but from white to black, I've earned my way in both arts, in traditional Karate, initially with Ken and Kevin Funakoshi, as well as in Taekwondo. And I've trained in both countries, in Japan and in Korea. And there is a relationship, certainly in terms of the forms. So it's not anything other than a realistic look at history, because the Koreans had their own indigenous martial arts program, which includes Taekyon, which is why their kicking is so sophisticated if you compare it to Okinawan Karate, to the root art. The Korean kicks are outstanding. But what happened was there was this long time frame in history where Japan occupied Korea, and then the Koreans were taught Shotokan Karate. In fact, if you look at the kanji, at the Chinese characters, the old name for Karate-do, right, wasn't the empty hand. It was the Chinese hand. And those characters that said Karate-do in Nihongo, in Japanese, in Korean, are Tangsudo. The characters are identical because the actual martial art that was being taught, Shotokan Karate-do, the literal Chinese writing said Tangsudo for the Tang Dynasty to symbolize China. And so that relationship is certainly there. What happened is after World War II, when Korea was liberated and restored, they then did more research and felt freer to include more of their historical indigenous material, which then came forth not just in what became Taekwondo, but also honestly in Hapkido, Harangdo, Kuksuwan, the other Korean martial arts. You can see it as well. And there's also that spirit. It's kind of hard to explain, but there's a different feeling in the different places if you've trained there. I also trained Wing Chun in Hong Kong, in the same place that Bruce Lee did. And the feeling is very different. The way the Chinese teach is very different from the way that the Japanese teach, which is very different from how the Koreans teach. And that in itself is at least an 8-minute story. So I'll save it for next time, but that's a teaser that if you still have that question, join us next time and I'll explain the differences.
Thank you. All right. So with that, I'll see you guys next week. We do these on Thursdays at 5 p.m. in Hawaii time, so live at 5, which is kind of a neat
Live at 5.
Yeah, a little ringy, catchy phrase there. So I'll see you guys later. Leave any comments. If you guys want to think about doing like a more philosophical, like talking thing, maybe we should do an interview style where we not only do techniques, but we also talk about historical things too, because martial arts is not just training the body, but also training the mind, as well as knowing where that came from and appreciation for the past, which I believe Professor Kai has done very well. He always relates it to the past and where it came from, and then goes to the future and also what we're doing present. So, you know, you gotta have all three, right? So, great. And thank you again for being here. And we're gonna see you guys next time. See you later.
Aloha.
Aloha.